Hello, I'm Christina Paganelli. I'm the founder of Drinkme Beverage Company. I'm here to answer a couple of FAQs that I think are really important about the product, and about my story and kind of how I founded it and what the purpose is of the drinks. So again, my name is Christina Paganelli. I founded Drinkme Beverage Company from my own experience. So it's been 17 years already, but I had stage 4 cancer, so it was thyroid cancer, but it metastasized into my lungs, which became stage 4. I had done a few medical treatments, but none of them worked. I was also pregnant at the same time, and I was also 6 months prior to being diagnosed with cancer, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So I was dealing with these two life-threatening diseases. And it really became evident that after some of the medical procedures, and I had my thyroid removed and I was radiated twice for my lungs, there really wasn't many more medical procedures that I could do, and I kind of had to step away from it for a bit. They couldn't give me any more radiation. On the MS side, there was MS drugs being discontinued because I had cancer, so I really didn't have any options. And this is where I kind of put 2 and 2 together, that there was a chemistry problem in my body. And I looked to do a healing, and I did lots of raw food and enzymes and probiotics and really good things to kind of push the healing into overdrive. And so I developed this product as really a kind of if I could take the raw food diet and kind of put it all together into one really important thing, would be to consume greens on a daily basis. And so I looked to a lot of the research that's out there on raw food nutrition and what we should be eating and consuming. And I tried to eat 2 heads of green leafy vegetables per day, and I simply couldn't do it chopped up into a bowl of salad. So I really took all of what I needed to have, all that nutrition, and I put it in a blender. And so from there, I really thought this would be a great idea because it's not accessible. I have to, pull up my blender and use it if I want to have some food. And so that's not always a reach for it when you're in a busy lifestyle and you need convenience. I had little babies at the time. I didn't have time to make myself stuff all the time, so I would make and freeze, and then I would make and freeze and take with me, and then people started asking me if they could have some and what I was doing, and then it really became, is there a market for this? And then it kind of just went from there. I knew that I wanted to keep it raw, which is not an easy thing in the world of consumer packaged goods. And I wanted to keep it without having any chemicals in it, any purees or concentrates or anything that I wouldn't particularly eat myself. So I set out to bring a new technology to Canada called high pressure. And basically it's a big machine, and the bottles are bottled. And then once they're bottled, they get dropped into a pressure chamber. And so it's the final step in processing. And so it doesn't, whereas pasteurization would be everything gets passed through a tube and it's all getting pasteurized, and then it gets put into the bottle. So there still is cross-contamination. So the high pressure technology is the most effective way to package anything. The only problem is that it's a super expensive technology, and it was cutting edge and very new at the time. So in 2009, I was determined that we were going to high pressure these beverages and keep it green and make sure that it wasn't going to be adulterated in any way, and I wouldn't have to add anything to it. So I had gone on a mission to kind of bring this technology to Canada, which led me to having the first novel application of it in Canada to the CFIA. So I applied to have it used as a food product and as an approved technology in Canada, and I received the first application. So it was really a trailblazer in terms of bringing this technology to Canada back in 2009. And while I was waiting for the license, I had moved my manufacturing to the US, where it wasn't a novel technology. It was something already being used in the stream of commerce. And so it wasn't novel. And so I could easily process it, and then bring it back into Canada. And to me, it was just about making sure that it was kept safe and unadulterated. But when I kind of did that export back to Canada, I really noticed that Canadians wanted to have a Canadian-made product. So years later, I've now returned the product to Canada. More recently, I was able to restart an operation in Leduc, Alberta. That's where I started, and that's where the original machine that was the first one in Canada was actually in Leduc, Alberta, which is where I did my research. So it took me a lot, because it's a government facility. It takes a lot of red tape to kind of get in there. But I'm there, I'm back, and so I just started manufacturing again in Canada, which is a little bit of a build. So I still am bringing the products that I'm selling in Canada in my direct market from the US. I bring them myself. I pack them on dry ice. I pack a trailer and I bring them, and they're frozen. And there's a couple of good news about that. And the good news about that is that the kale is actually harvested, cut, and in the bottle in probably within 3 to 5 days of it being harvested. So it's really fresh. Now, yeah, then we go and turn around and freeze it. So that's, I'll talk about that in a second. But in Canada, it used to be a frozen product. So before the technology of high pressure, I used to sell this as a frozen product. So it was already a frozen product, and a lot of my my market and the people that consume this product appreciate it frozen. So even though we're actually high pressuring it for food safety, I still sell it as a frozen product. So a couple things. One, I bring it in from the US right now until that production facility in Leduc, Alberta can handle the capacity of what we need right now. And it's a little bit of a slow build. There's been a lot of people off of work and a lot of short staffed. So I'm not able to get the production in Leduc to a capacity where I can produce more than what I need for the stores. So there's some stores in Vancouver and across through Manitoba that actually sell it, and they sell it fresh. So I manufacture in Leduc right now for the stores, and I'm doing just small batch right now while I get the training up and I get through coaching all the new staff and everything that's actually in that production facility. And we're going to be ramping up this next year, so I hope to be able to deliver the fresh product from Leduc to the direct market as well. So, and also the reason why I have decided to keep it frozen to the direct distribution is that this is a really weird world right now, and the Purelator and FedEx shipments are not arriving. They're not arriving on time. There's just short-staffed. And so when I freeze the product and then I pack it on dry ice and I pack it on ice, it really allows me the comfort of knowing that it's going to get to the end destination frozen, or at least if there's any delays or there's any problems, it's still going to be cold. And you can keep this product in the fridge because it is preserved. So you can still keep it in the fridge. So as long as we don't have it at room temperature, the product is safe. And so I appreciate them frozen in that direct shipment so that we can keep the product chilled. And so for now, this is what we're gonna do until, and I've lost I've lost so many shipments in just screw-ups with Purelator, and they do not guarantee anything. So if it goes ground, they don't guarantee the shipment, they don't refund the money. So as long as if they let it sit somewhere for 2 weeks and then they get it to the end destination, I pay for that. So it's really kind of a weird world, and I try to make as many distribution or deliveries as I can directly to the home, and that really safeguards and makes sure that the product gets to where it needs to be. I'm not we don't have to use styrofoam and packaging, and it's not cost on top of cost to get the product out there, and I would really like to keep it at the cost that it's at, so that we don't have to increase the cost. And so I'm trying to do a lot myself so that I can just bring nutrition to people, and that was my vision. That was my vision, to bring convenience and nutrition to people, and I'll talk about the nutrition in a second. But I just wanted to go through a couple of the kind of housekeeping things with the product and why it arrives frozen. And then I'd like to get into the flavors and kind of what the difference is between them. And it seems like the best seller is the multi-pack, and that's kind of why I developed that, was because it just gives everybody a sample of all the different flavors. And if you're drinking it and committing to it on a daily basis or using it for convenience, it's good to just mix up the flavors. And so I will just go through a couple of things on here. So kale, why kale? I chose kale because I was dealing with cancer. So this is a product I developed for myself. I was dealing with cancer, and cancer is quite it's like the worst thing to deal with. And so when I took a look at all the superfoods, and there's a ton of superfoods out there, but one that was really a targeting cancer is kale. And it was, sometimes people say to me, you can't have too much kale. You're absolutely right with that. If we were to take it and take a head of kale and chop it up into a bowl and eat it, it actually is a toxin to the human body. If we don't deactivate there's actually toxins in kale, and if we don't deactivate those toxins, it actually can be toxic, and this is why it produces gas. Any of the cruciferous vegetables. But that toxin is actually an antioxidant in the right form. So one of the things that I stumbled on by accident was how to convert that into the antioxidant that the body can recognize. It does not have to be digested. All that needs to be is absorbed. But when it becomes absorbed, that kale has been converted into the isothianate, or the actual antioxidant that goes into the body and targets carcinogens. So if I was to just eat kale, it wouldn't do what my products are doing, and that's really food science. So why kale? I chose it because I was dealing with I had stage 4, so because it was in my lungs, so that became stage 4. So for me, I needed to attack the cancer, and I tried everything, food, enzymes, probiotics, anything that I knew that would really go in and attack the cancer. I did, but I was also trying to maintain 2 heads of green leafy vegetables, a raw vegan diet, and the list goes on about all the things you have to remember. So that's why I chose kale. And raw, I think we know what raw is. Raw means that you're not heating it over 99 degrees Fahrenheit, which will completely denature the enzymes. We want to preserve those enzymes and make sure that they're not denatured. So is kale hard to digest? Yes, we just went over that. Kale is very hard to digest, and in fact you will not digest it. And you will not digest it because the human body doesn't have the enzymes to digest it. It's the cellulase enzyme that we're missing. We don't actually have it naturally in our body. We have to supplement with it, or we have to chew the kale until it's completely liquid. And then even at that, it's still a toxin. So there's a couple different layers to this bioactive, and food is very powerful. This is one example of where food is incredibly powerful and has the power to do things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has the power to do things in everybody's body, in everybody's blood type, and in every situation. Sometimes, like I said, kale is a toxin until it isn't. Okay, so we know what a superfood is. Okay, why are they so thick and fibrous? Okay, so in the detox process, the fiber actually goes in and breaks the intestine. So it's this idea of, well, I juice, and these taste very different from what I do. I like juicing. Okay, well, yes, juicing is great, but there's no fiber, and if there's no fiber, you're not pulling the toxins out with you, and you have to make sure that's the whole point of detox, is to make sure those toxins are coming out. And so kale, again, it wears the cape of the superfood. It has both soluble and insoluble fiber. It's a complete fiber. So insoluble and soluble fiber together. So we keep the ribs, the stems, the entire plant goes in the product, and it stays in the product because it actually acts as a rake and it pulls all the toxins out. And so anybody that's actually had their product knows exactly what I'm talking about, because the next morning, you're definitely going to know that those toxins are coming out of you. And you're going to notice that they're coming out of you like nothing has ever pulled them out of you before. So that's getting into a little bit of TMI, but I think it's important to talk about it because we're talking about healing and detoxing. So it isn't good to mix fruits and vegetables. Great question. And I'll pair this with the question about food combination. So even if we're talking about fruit, there's sugary fruits and there's low glycemic and high glycemic fruits, and they shouldn't be mixed together. And you should be ashamed of yourself because you're mixing things and they shouldn't be. This is sometimes the questions that I see on the our demo reports, or people that send things into me. You should be ashamed of yourself putting so much kale in there and mixing food. And I have a really good argument to support this. And actually, I'm going to pull on the research of Dr. Gabriel Cousens, because in his book, Conscious Eating, I believe it is, he discusses the rules of food combination in depth. And one of the things that he says in there is, if you blended it and put it into this form and broken up in all the cells, you can take those rules of food combination and throw them out. Okay, they don't even apply because you're no longer digesting. This is actually pre-digested. So as it is in the bottle, this is pre-digested. You do not have to do anything to digest this. As soon as you start drinking it, it's a fly. As soon as you start drinking it, it's going to start absorbing in your saliva, and it's going to take about 4 seconds to absorb into your bloodstream, like through your saliva and into your bloodstream. You do not need to digest these products. So the rules of food combination, and can we mix fruits and vegetables? Again, rules of food combination, none of that applies. And so that's the beauty of this particular product. That's like, again, I was trying to take the raw food diet and shove everything. If I could take the whole thing and say, what's the most important part, and shove it in a bottle, this is it. And that was, I taught myself how to do raw food because there really wasn't, 20 years ago, there really wasn't any information about how to do raw food. You had to buy all these things. Well, there wasn't Amazon Prime then where you could just get, a dehydrator in a day. I had to wait like 6 weeks to order Vitamix and a dehydrator, and I was starving. And, I broke so many, kitchen top blenders with trying to make an almond, whatever. And I just felt like the diet was exhausting to me, and I wanted to just really stick to basics. And this was, the encapsulation of my entire experience of healing put into a bottle. So I do want to go through a little bit of the flavors right now because I think it's super important. Well, which is the most greens, which is the healthiest, and what do you recommend if you feel sick? So I want to kind of answer all these questions together. So this was my first product, Orange Kale Banana. This was my first product, and I was introducing greens into my diet. I was moving from 2 bowls of cut up lettuce in a salad bowl to I'm now doing this. And so this was really all the greens I could tolerate at the time. And so I developed this flavor, green, Orange Kale Banana. I found it really delicious, really easy to consume greens. And actually my first thing was I took this to a food contest in Manitoba, and I won first place in it. And it gave me the money to commercialize the product. So to do the label, the nutritional labels and everything, this is how you commercialize a product. So it gave me the startup money to do it. So this is an award winner. I don't prefer this one anymore because my taste buds have changed significantly. But this was my first flavor. And then one day I was at the St. Norbert Farmers Market in Winnipeg, and somebody came up to me and said, my wife has either bulimia or anorexia, and she's pregnant. And so I need to get food into her body. She won't eat anything. So can you shove as much greens as you possibly can into this? I'll pay you to make this custom flavor for me. And I thought, okay, that's a really heavy duty kind of flavor. But then the next week I came back and I said, okay, I did it. One head, and I shoved it in, and he said, it's perfect. And she said, I love it. So she kept drinking it, and it actually got her over her, she wouldn't eat any food, but she would drink. So that was kind of the next flavor I developed. And I developed this from this unique story of somebody else's trials and tribulations. So The next one I developed to have more prairie ingredients in it. And actually, I wanted people at the time, because remember this is 20 years ago, said, put it in a frosty bottle. I don't want to see it. It's ugly. It's green. I don't want to see green. I want to see something else. And I thought, okay, I know how to fix this. I'm going to bring some color into the brand and the whole line of beverages. And so then I thought beets. I ended up using some beets and some raspberries because I was really focused on Canadian ingredients. So this one just became this perfect color and flavor and texture of just like this earthy taste. And then people wanted low sugar. So after this, so this was back like when I was in America already, I started having access to coconut water. And when you're in Southern California, coconut water is everywhere. And so I started experimenting with coconuts. And I had really bad acne. I don't know if some of you remember back 20 years ago, but I was detoxing all the chemicals out and it started coming out. And so when I moved to Southern California, I started eating a coconut a day, and the whole coconut, not just the coconut water. So I wouldn't just buy coconut water, I'd buy the whole coconut, I'd have them crack the lid, and I would make myself a coconut smoothie. And then I thought, you know what? This is really healing my face. Something is really happening with this coconut. So I'm gonna actually, people want low sugar, I'm gonna come up with this low sugar blend and blend coconut and kale together. So this one, and I have another flavor which is not yet on the market, but it's called Coco Mojo. I'm gonna be introducing it in the spring of next year. So I'll just kind of go through and explain 1 serving of kale, 2 servings of kale, 1 serving of beets, 3 servings of kale. And then this one also has just 1 serving. So these 2 here are just like the intro flavors, 1 serving. They all have, so this one has, so in combination of fruits and vegetables, these 2 here have 4 servings of fruits and vegetables in a bottle. This one has 3.5 servings of fruits and vegetables in a bottle, and this one has 5.5 servings of fruits and vegetables in a bottle. So right now we have these 4 flavors, and they're all processed in the same way. They are all, the kale is activated and the toxins are removed, and I've had them tested. I've had to test them for toxicology before. Because I was the novel food application, so I had a lot of opportunity to test kale with, and I had to use some mustard farmers in Saskatchewan to make that happen, so they could test the toxins because they had the right equipment to do it because they were testing for mustard. So I actually had to go to them to get the toxicology tested on the kale and prove that there was no toxins. And so this is how I know they're not in my product. And then again, there's something called Prop 65 in California where it's heavy metals. Kale has an actual reputation for absorbing heavy metals out of the earth. And again, this is no longer kale. So if you remember, if you have water and you take lemon and you put the lemon in the water, it's no longer water. It's now lemon water. It's now lemonade. So this is how food science works. As soon as you take product A and you mix it with product B, you're no longer having product A and product B, you have product C. So that's really the basic way I can explain it. But we have, actually there's some catalysts that actually block the receptor sites of the heavy metals, and it doesn't allow for absorption into the body. So let's talk about absorption too, because I do want to talk about the sugars, and I want to talk about absorption of the carbohydrates. So I do have a lot of questions coming at me with, oh my gosh, is there ever a lot of sugar in there? And is there ever a lot of carbohydrates in your beverages? Yeah, because this is designed as a meal. So a meal has fiber, carbohydrates, protein, and these have proteins in them, between 6 and 8 grams of plant protein per bottle. And we have all this nutrition, but because we have fiber, I want you to take the sugars and I want you to take the carbohydrates and cut them in half. And that's a rule. If you look online, you'll find a lot of information about, in the presence of fiber, you take the nutritional panel and you cut the sugar and you cut the carbs in half, because in the presence of fiber, it doesn't allow that sugar and the carbohydrates to be absorbed. So it's not like we can cut them in half on the nutritional label. We can't change what's in the bottle, but we can change how it's absorbed. And how we're changing how it's absorbed is because we keep fiber in the product. So fiber is a winner in many ways. And so again, I hope this has been really informational and really helpful to understand the product. We do talk about, so I do also want to talk about one more thing. So I'm noticing that the color on the drinks are not, so number one, it's got nothing to do with the freezing. It has a lot to do with the fact that, so not these ones because I've actually corrected for it, but I did leave room at the top in the beginning to allow for the product to be frozen in the bottle. And so now I don't leave any room at all. So actually when it gets frozen, the actual liquid starts coming out of the bottle. So it might be sticky, which I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to fix those things. I don't know how to fix it with a frozen product other than to then separate them and go back into, because we used to have frozen pouches and they were in bags, okay? So as we move forward into this next year, I might try to separate that. So these bottles will not be frozen in the bottle. They might just be frozen in some other form. So with that being said, the bottle, the color is that way. So if you take something that's green and you add something that's bright orange, what are you gonna get? You're not gonna get bright green anymore. So one of the things that I'm noticing is two things. One is the orange juice that I've been using. This has just been a really rich crop of oranges, and the orange is so vibrant orange that actually when it hits the green, it actually does not produce a vibrant green color. Also throughout the year, because we do small batches, the kale changes in the growing regions, and some of it will be in the winter season. It's actually more green than it is in the summer season. It's more pale. So this will all contribute to the factors of the color of the product. Now, so it will appear a little bit more on the brown side, which is like, it looks like it's, oxidized or, whatever, but it actually isn't. And there was a little bit of air in the product. So some of it did oxidize. And now I've removed the air completely out of the product, which is why it's kind of sticky and sloppy. And I apologize for that. And I'm working through it. But the good news is that that's a one-way valve. So when the product comes out, there's a seal in there, and the liquid can come out, but the air does not come back in. So when the air comes back in, that's when it starts, getting, we don't want the air to come in because that will adulterate the product. So when the liquid comes up out of there, it just means that it's just like when you freeze something and you forget it in the freezer and it explodes. That's kind of what I'm talking about. But these are also, when you think that you're going to lose liquid, just so that you know, the label says 15.2 ounces, or in Canada, if they're made in Canada, the label will say 450 mils or 473. We are overfilling these by 20 milliliters, so they are overfilled. So this is a 15.2. You're actually getting 16.5 milliliters in a bottle. So when we lose a little bit, that's just to make up for that stuff that's lost. So when you actually have the product defrosted, it'll be sucked in. Yes, it will be, because we're pushing the air out of the bottle. But you're getting what is on the label. So that's what is important, is that to make sure that you're getting what you're paying for. So the aesthetics of it all right now, we're going to work through a little bit of those, troubleshoot those issues. This is a new bottle that I'm working with, and I wouldn't typically freeze in the bottle. Like I said, we used to have this pouch that was 4 pouches and you drop them into your blender. But I'm really working at, okay, who am I servicing here, and how am I getting the product to the market? This year has been a little bit unorthodox in terms of how to deliver the product to the consumer. And I feel like the best way to get the product to the consumer is direct right now. The stores and the distribution and the purulator and all these other factors make it really difficult to actually get a product to somebody for a reasonable price. And so this is why right now it is how it is, and I'm working through some of those changes and hope to solve them as the supply chain issues get a little better. And also we get the benefit of me delivering the product myself, because I can't rely on the supply chain, and that's okay. It's a good thing. I'm really enjoying delivering to people, and I'm really enjoying that one-on-one communication. And if there's more questions, feel free to ask. And I really appreciate your time today. Again, my name is Christina Paganelli, and you can contact me directly and ask me any questions that you want. I'm always available. Thank you so much for joining me today. Bye-bye.